The stars above Earth were no longer beautiful. That night, they were covered by giant alien ships, dark and glowing, floating in space like gods looking down on ants. The people of Earth stared at the skies in fear, from rooftops, cities, deserts. Ocean's every screen showed the same thing, the arrival of the Valari Ascendancy. They had come without warning, without a single shot, and parked their massive fleet above Terra. The biggest ship, a golden triangle almost the size of a small moon, sent a message on every human channel. The alien face that appeared was cold, sharp, and filled with pride, was the Valari High Chancellor. He spoke slowly, in clear English, his voice echoing in cities and homes. You have one choice, Neil. To the Valari Ascendancy, or be burned to ash. Then silence. No further explanation. No reason. No mercy. In the United Earth Council chambers, leaders argued, voices rising, faces pale. The Valari had already destroyed the colonies on Neptune's moons, and no ships had survived when they tried to stop them. Earth's planetary defense system was weak, broken from past wars, and half of the fleet was still recovering from the disaster at Titan. Captain Luke Barrett watched the chaos on the council screens. Sitting quietly in the back corner, he wasn't a politician, he was a soldier. He had fought the Valari before, barely survived, and now they were here above his home. He clenched his fists, trying to stay calm, but his eyes stayed locked. On the main screen showing the enemy fleet, around the world, people panicked. Some tried to flee to underground shelters, others prayed, and some shouted for war. But most were silent, looking up, feeling small. The alien threat felt too big, too powerful, in a secret chamber beneath the Earth's Defense Command Center. An older woman stepped out of the shadows. Her name was Admiral Grace Monroe. She had once led Earth's last great battle fleet till politics pushed her into retirement. But now, the council had no one else to turn to. She looked at the frightened leaders and said one sentence that silenced the entire room. It's time to wake the Black Armada. Whispers started immediately, some shocked, others laughing. That's just a rumor, one general said. A myth, said another. But Grace stared at them without blinking. I was the one who built it, she said, her voice calm, and I'm the only one who can activate it. The council was divided, unsure if this Black Armada was real lore, if it was just a story to give false hope. But Grace didn't wait. She pulled out a secure communicator and sent a message to a hidden base near the edge of the solar system. It was a simple message, coded but powerful. Protocol Midnight initiate fleet recovery. Far out in the cold silence beyond Neptune, a dormant signal was received deep under the ice of a forgotten moon. Hangars came alive, doors hissed open, and machines that hadn't moved in decades began to wake. Black ships, long and silent, rose from the ground like shadows given life. Their engines hummed quietly, unseen by any telescope. The Black Armada had been sleeping, but not anymore. Back on Earth, Luke was called to a dusty base on the moon, one he hadn't visited in years. He arrived to find Grace waiting for him in front of an old warship hidden in a crater. You're still angry at the council, she said, without turning. I'm angry they left us unprepared. Luke replied. Grace nodded. Then help me prove they were wrong. Luke looked at the ship, dark steel, scarred from past wars, but still standing. The name was barely visible on the side. Use valor. He hadn't seen her in years. She still works. He asked. She will. Once we give her a crew, Grace said. A small smile forming on her lips, while Earth prepared for surrender. Grace and Luke began assembling a team in secret. Pilots, engineers, gunners, some retired, some disgraced. Some still loyal to Earth's honor. Among them was Maria Dawson, a brilliant mechanic who once hacked an alien engine during a battle, and Jake Holloway, a reckless but talented pilot who had flown into a black hole and lived. The world still. Thought surrender was the only option, but far from Earth's cameras. In the darkness of space, something was moving. The Black Armada 8 warships, faster, deadlier, and more advanced than anything Earth had ever shown the galaxy. Each ship had one mission: to protect humanity at all costs, to show the Valari what humans did when someone ordered them to. Kneel. And they were almost ready. The countdown had started. War was coming, but this time, Earth wouldn't be alone, not with the Black Armada rising again. A quiet signal echoed through deep space, far beyond Neptune's frozen rings. No one on Earth heard it, no one except machines buried in black rock, hidden in the cold shadows of forgotten moons. Lights blinked to life inside old hangars, dust shaking from the walls, huge warships black as night. Silent as death began to stir after years of sleep. They were the ships of Project Black, and now they had been summoned back into the light. On the moon, inside the old base, Captain Luke Barrett stood before a holographic map. Admiral Grace. Monroe pointed at blinking red dots. Valari scout ships slowly surrounding Earth. "They think we're broken," she said. "That we've already surrendered." Luke nodded. "Then let's not waste time proving them wrong." Grace sent out encrypted orders messages wrapped in old Terran war code only a few veterans still remembered. The calls reached out across the system. A secret station hidden in the asteroid belt answered first, then another near Uranus, where an old pilot named Elijah Boone had been living in silence. And one by one, ghost bases lit up. All part of a plan built for this exact day. Earth's final test. Maria Dawson, the engineer, landed on the moon's surface with a dusty tool pack and a big grin. She walked straight up to the old used Valor, slapped her hand on the hull, and said, "Let's get you breathing again, girl." Inside the ship, she found systems dead, but not lost. Wires, circuits, engines, everything was there, just waiting for the right hands to wake it up. Jake Holloway flew in next, late as always. His small stealth shuttle bouncing a bit on landing. "Did I miss the apocalypse?" he joked as he pulled off his helmet. "You're just in time to stop it," Luke replied, shaking his hand. Jake looked up at the UU's Valor and gave a low whistle. "Didn't think I'd ever see her again," he muttered. "She's a beast." Days passed in silence, but the base buzzed with purpose. Crews ran through long-forgotten corridors, cleaning, repairing, testing on Earth. The Council had no idea what was happening. Grace had locked them out. If they were going to stop the Valari, they couldn't afford hesitation or fear out near. Pluto, the UES Tempest, woke from hibernation, its power core glowing like a heartbeat. Then came the UES Revenant, the Phantom, the Ironclad, and other 7 ships total, plus the Valor, each one cloaked in black stealth armor, invisible to most sensors, together. They formed the Black Armada, but the Valari had eyes too. There, long-range scanners picked up strange energy shifts beyond Mars. Their command ship sent out scouts to investigate. Sleek silver craft slicing through space. Jake Holloway got the warning first. "They're sniffing around," he said, his voice tense in the comms. Grace didn't flinch. "Let them," she said. "They'll find nothing until it's too late," but one scout got too close. It spotted movement in an old mining crater and began transmitting. Luke didn't hesitate. He launched a pursuit ship, small, fast, deadly, and personally led the chase. The Valari scout dove into the shadows of Jupiter's moons, weaving through radiation storms, but Luke was faster. He disabled the enemy ship with precision and boarded it. Inside, he found something strange. Not just computers and not computers and weapons, but a small pod. Inside the pod was a young alien, wounded and shaking. It wasn't Valaria, looked like one, but different. The creature looked up at Luke and whispered in broken English. "They lied to you," it said. "The Valari. Not one people, Some want peace, Fire, before it passed out, it handed Luke a device, glowing faint blue. Grace studied it later and realized it was a communication key, one that could unlock Valari signals. We might have our way in, she said, eyes narrowing, but we'll need someone crazy enough to fly deep. Jake raised his hand, smiling. Did someone say crazy? As repairs neared completion, Grace stood before her team, now fully gathered. Old veterans, young recruits, techs, pilots, and warborn legends all stood under one roof. She looked at them, voice low but clear. They told us to kneel, she said, but we do not kneel. We build. We do not beg. We rise. The Black Armada is no longer a secret. It's our message. We are not weak. We are ready. The ships rumbled quietly in their hangars, as if listening. Soon they would rise from the shadows. But not yet. Not until Earth's enemy stepped too close. And when that happened, they would strike not in fear, but with fury. From silence would come the roar of the Black Armada, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Clouds gathered above Earth's capital as the Valari gave their final warning. Their message played in every city, town, and colony. You have 3 solar days to kneel. If you do not, Terra will be erased. The world fell into silence. Parents held their children closer, shops closed, churches filled. And leaders whispered desperate plans behind locked doors. Some still hoped the aliens would show mercy, but most knew mercy wasn't in their nature. In orbit, Earth's few remaining warships hovered like broken teeth. The Valari circled them with smooth, silver cruisers twice the size, 10 times the firepower. Human pilots sat in their chairs, waiting for orders that would never come. Their eyes showed it clearly. They felt abandoned, defeated, but underground, in the blackened chambers of the moon base, something different was happening. The used Valor roared to life, engines pulsing like thunder. Maria Dawson slid under the floor panels, her hands covered in grease and heat marks. Plasma regulators online, she shouted, but if you push her too hard, she'll blow. Captain Luke Barrett grinned. We won't push her wheel, make her fly. Jake Holloway leaned back in his chair, booted feet resting on the edge of the console. We going to test this beast or just stare at blinking lights all day? Luke nodded. Time to wake her up. The launch doors groaned open. Moon dust swirling as the Valar floated up into the night. She was massive old, scarred but beautiful in her own way. Her black armor shimmered with new energy. Her weapons. Ports alive again. From a distance, she looked like a shadow breaking free from gravity. And she wasn't alone. Across the system, 7 other warships began moving, silent but deadly, one by one. They gathered near Saturn's rings. Hiding behind the gas giant's stormy face, the Black Armada was forming. Not a fleet for defense, this was a weapon, a promise. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the United Earth Council voted in secret. They had made their decision. If the Valari attacked, they would surrender, too many lives at stake. The president said, they're not asking for war, just obedience, but not everyone agreed. One council member, Elias Trenton, stood up during the vote. This is not obedience. He said, this is slavery, the moment we kneel. We are no longer human, but his voice was ignored. The vote passed. Earth was ready to surrender, and the Valari knew it. On Mars, red dust blew across ruined outposts. The Valari had already taken control of the main colony. Their soldiers marched through mining tunnels, watching humans with cold silver eyes. Some miners tried to resist. They were dragged into the open and forced to kneel. A small boy cried as his father was beaten in front of him. The Valari recorded everything, then sent the footage to Earth. This is your future, the message said. That night, Grace Monroe stood alone in the observation tower of the UES Tempest. She watched as the enemy tightened its grip on Earth. Watched as her own world prepared to bow, but she didn't move. She didn't blink. She whispered, "Not yet." On the Valor, Luke gathered his crew. "You all know what's coming," he said. "You've seen the broadcasts. If you want to leave, no one will stop you." No one moved. Maria smirked. "I didn't fix this ship just to let her rot again." Jake cracked his knuckles. "Besides, someone has to remind the Valari we're not tourists." They set course for the edge of the asteroid belt. Their mission, intercept a Valari relay station and capture its data. If they could understand the enemy's command signals, they might find a weakness as they entered the field of rocks and ice. 3 Valari scout ships appeared. Jake pulled hard on the controls. Diving between spinning asteroids, "We've got incoming." He shouted. Laser fire lit up the black. The Valor's cannons returned fire, blasting one enemy out of the sky, but the others were faster, newer, deadly. Luke stood behind the gunnery station. Firing burst after burst. Maria rerouted power. To the shields, sparks flying around her head. One Valari scout clipped their wing and exploded. The blast sent the Valor into a spiral. Alarms blaring. "Stabilize. Stabilize." Jake gritted his teeth and pulled hard. The ship groaned, but she obeyed. They landed hard on a drifting rock and powered down. Silent, hidden, wounded, but alive. Luke led a small team into the Valari relay ship floating nearby. Inside, it was cold, sleek, glowing with alien tech. They moved fast, planting signal taps and stealing files, but something strange happened. A Valari captain appeared, unarmed, holding up both hands. He spoke through a translator. "Not all of us agree," he said. "Not all of us serve the Chancellor." He handed Luke a data crystal. "This shows you where their core is, the place that binds their fleet. Destroy that, and they lose everything." Before Luke could ask more, the Valari activated a self-destruct. The humans escaped just in time. Back aboard the Valar, they stared at the crystal in silence. They had a lead now, a target, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to turn the war. But Earth didn't know. Back home, the clock was still ticking. 2 days left. 2 days before the kneeling. 2 days before fire. Unless the Black Armada struck first. The skies above Earth were darker than ever. Not because of night, but because of the Valari fleet. They moved into closer orbit, casting long shadows over oceans and cities. Their largest ship, the High Dread Solkara, blocked out the sun in some places, and from its silver body came the final message: "Kneel within 1 solar day, or Terra will cease to exist." People across the planet froze, in schools, streets, hospitals, everywhere. People waited for a miracle that wasn't coming. The council prepared the documents of surrender, ready to transmit them to the Valari. But the president hesitated. He stared at the paper, fingers trembling. He didn't know it yet, but he would never need to sign it. Because far above Earth, something massive was rising. Silent, invisible, black as deep space. The Black Armada had finally arrived. From behind Earth's moon, the first ship decloaked, the UES Tempest. With its sharp lines and red glowing engines, emerged like a blade. Seconds later, the U's Valor, still scarred from the asteroid battle, joined her side. Then came the others, 7 in total. Their dark armor drank in the sunlight, and every cannon, every missile, every railgun on their hulls was locked and aimed. The Valari sensors detected them seconds too late. By the time they turned, Earth's silent shadows had become fire. Captain Luke Barrett stood tall on the Valor's bridge. He looked calm, but every vein in his body burned. "Send the order," he said. "We're done hiding." Across the Terran network, every screen flickered. The Valari message was interrupted. A human face appeared instead. Marl Grace Monroe. She stared into the camera, no fear in her voice. "You ordered us to kneel," she said, "but we do not kneel. We build, we rise, and we remember. We are the children of Earth born in fire, shaped in war, and we will show you who we really are." The message ended. Then, from the stars, came the roar of Terran engines. The Black Armada charged. The first Valari ships to react were caught off guard. The UES Revenant opened with its shockwave cannons, splitting 2 enemy destroyers in half. The UES Phantom dropped into a lower orbit, using Earth's gravity to slingshot past enemy lines and slice through the side of a cruiser. In the Valor's gun deck, Maria Dawson rerouted. Power to forward weapons, her voice sharp. Fire in 3, 2, 1. A blinding lance of plasma tore through the sky. The blast pierced the shields of a Valari command ship, something they swore couldn't happen. Down on Earth, people stared up in disbelief. Children pointed at the sky as trails of fire lit up the atmosphere, burning enemy wreckage falling like meteor showers. Someone whispered, "They're fighting back." Another shouted, "They're winning," and then the screams turned into cheers. But it wasn't over. The Valari fleet shifted into formation. The Sol Kara, their main dreadnought, released smaller assault drones by the thousands. They swarmed the Black Armada, moving like a cloud of teeth, each one equipped with cutting lasers and kamikaze drives. The Terran ships began taking damage, shields glowing red, hulls groaning. Under pressure, Jake Holloway, flying escort in a smaller strike fighter, dove into the swarm. His voice filled the comms. "I've got 20 on my tail, make that 30. He looped around the Valar, baiting the drones into missile range. Maria locked them in. Gotcha. The cannons fired. Half the swarm exploded instantly. But Jake's ship took a hit. He spiraled toward the planet's atmosphere, alarms blaring, ejecting now. He shouted, pulling the release. His fighter vanished in fire. But a tiny pod shot out just in time, disappearing into the clouds below. Luke gritted his teeth. "Get a beacon on him. Don't let him go dark in the middle of the battle." A Valari voice broke into Terran channels. It was deep, mechanical, without emotion. "This resistance is meaningless," it said. "You will be broken." Grace Monroe responded calmly. "We've been broken before," she said. "But every time, we rebuild. Can you say the same?" As the Armada pushed forward, Luke studied the enemy formation. There, just past the Sol Kara's defense, Wallace's strange ship hovered motionless. It was shaped like a triangle, covered in symbols. Luke recognized it from the data crystal given by the Valari defector. "That's their hive node," he said quietly. "The brain of their whole system." He opened a private channel to Grace. "If we take that out, their fleet loses coordination." Grace's voice was steady. "Then, that's your new target." Luke turned to his crew. "We go through their wall," he said. "One push, all or nothing." The Valor's engines glowed blue as she charged straight into the mouth of the storm. Enemy ships closed in from all sides. Missiles screamed across space. Drones slammed into the hull, but still she flew, cutting through the battlefield like a black arrow. The Valari did not expect anyone to make it that far, because no one ever had. But the Black Armada wasn't just anyone. It was humanity's answer to being told to kneel, and the answer was war. The target was locked. The Valor's final cannon began charging. Luke looked ahead, not blinking. "Let's show them how humans say no," he whispered, and then the stars lit up. Again, the Valar shook, not from fear, but from the force of its own power. Its engines burned blue, pushing the ship forward through a wall of fire and wreckage. Around it, space tore apart. The Valari defense grid was collapsing, but not quietly, inside the command deck. Captain Luke Barrett stood like stone. He gave no orders, now just nodded once as his crew did what they had trained for. Each breath felt heavier, every second slower. They were going for the Hive node, the strange Valari command vessel that floated behind the enemy line. It looked like a floating blade, silent, sharp, and sacred to the enemy. From there, every Valari ship was controlled, guided, and synchronized. If it fell, their entire fleet would fall apart. But the path wasn't clear. Dozens of alien ships moved to intercept. Their cannons charged with red light. One shot would tear the Valar in half. "Ready plasma bursts," Luke said quietly. Maria Dawson, her hands flying over the controls, responded, overcharged and ready to burn. Fire. The Valars? Cannon screamed. A beam of white-blue energy erupted forward, splitting a Valari cruiser in half. It exploded in silence, flames blooming in the void. Still, more came. Smaller ships, fast, angry. Like wasps protecting a nest, Jake Holloway, still missing from the crash, couldn't be there to intercept. So another pilot took his place, Samantha Reyes, a young fighter ace with nothing left to lose. She launched in a striker craft from the Tempest's hangar. Her voice crackled in Luke's ear. "Buy me 10 seconds and I'll clear your path." Luke nodded. 10 seconds is all we need. Reyes dove head first into the swarm, weaving between blasts. Drawing their attention, she fired flares, dodged missiles. Even let a few drones get close just to bring them into a trap. Then, just before her fuel ran dry, she triggered her eject. The fighter exploded behind her, taking the Valari interceptors with it. The path was open, but not for long. The Hive node began to pulse. It charged a defensive shield no Terran weapon had ever breached. Luke stared at the growing energy field. Maria's voice came over the speaker. "We don't have anything strong enough to punch through that." But Luke remembered something from the defectors' warning. Their code isn't just mechanical. The alien had said, it's emotional. They fear passion. He had an idea. Crazy. Reckless, just the kind of idea humanity was known for. "Bring up the old Terran frequency package," he ordered. "Broadcast it directly into their core systems." Maria hesitated. "The emotion wave files from the AI experiments." Luke nodded. "Do it." They activated a signal music. Laughter, screams, prayers, crying babies. It wasn't a weapon. Not in the traditional way. It was life-raw, wild, human emotion in sound. The Valari systems had never faced anything like it. The Hive node shimmered, then flickered, its shield cracked, the Valar's cannon locked on fire. Luke said, the blast struck clean through the weakened barrier. The Hive ship trembled, then erupted into blinding white across space. Valari ships froze. There, formations collapsed, movement lost, minds disconnected. It was like watching a great beast go still. No roar, no fight, just silence. On Earth, the skies began to clear. Children looked up and saw stars again, and down in the control rooms of every human city, alarms turned off for the first time in weeks. The Valari's grip on the planet had shattered, but the cost was high. The Valar was spinning. Now systems? Fried from the emotional feedback loop, fires raged inside. Luke helped carry a wounded officer from the burning corridor. Maria's voice crackled in the smoke. Main engines out, were caught in gravity drift. They were falling. Toward Earth evac pods. Luke asked, 3 functional, she said. Barely. He looked around at his crew burned, bleeding, but alive. They had done the impossible. But they wouldn't all make it home. He pointed to the escape pods. You go, he said to Maria and the others. I'll stay. Maria shook her head. Not happening. You're the only one who knows the new fleet codes, Luke said, calm but firm. If you don't make it, the Armada dies with us. One by one, the crew was loaded into the pods. Maria looked at him one last time, tears in her eyes. You better not die. Luke, he smiled softly. I'll try. The pods launched, disappearing into the atmosphere like falling stars. Inside the Valor, Luke turned toward the burning control panel. He sat down, hands on the wheel. He aimed the ship away from populated zones, toward the ocean. As the heat rose around him, he whispered one final word to himself: freedom. Then the Valar vanished in a streak of flame, a flash in the sky. And silence followed, but the galaxy had already changed. The Black Armada had spoken. And the universe would never forget the day a planet stood tall because one ship refused to kneel. The Valar was gone. Earth's skies had gone quiet. But the oceans still churned from where the mighty warship had fallen. Flames had vanished into the waves, and with it Captain Luke Barrett. No body recovered, no signal left, only a trail of black smoke rising over the sea. Across the world, people stood in silence. They watched the news screens showing the last image, the Valar diving into the ocean like a burning star. And they wept, not just for the man, but for what he represented. Humanity's will, the refusal to kneel. Admiral Grace Monroe stood aboard the used Tempest, hands behind her back. The battle above Earth had ended, but the war was far from over. Hundreds of Velari ships remained scattered across the system, confused, leaderless, but still dangerous. She stared at the fractured fleet map, blinking red dots drifting in chaos. Then she turned to her officers. "Now we hunt," she said. In the recovery bay of the UES Phantom, Maria Dawson sat quietly, staring at a broken piece of the Valor's hull. She had carried it with her, ripped it from the wall before the escape pod launched. She hadn't spoken in hours, not since Luke stayed behind. A soft voice broke the silence. "You were on the Valor." Maria turned. A medic stood there holding a data slate. "We picked up something strange during the wreckage scans," he said, showing her. The screen flickered an emergency beacon code. It wasn't from the Valor's bridge. It was from deep inside the ship's auxiliary systems. Maria's heart skipped. "Is it still active?" "Barely," the medic replied. "Signal's weak, might be a glitch," but Maria was already moving. "I'm going after him," she said. Across the fleet, word spread like lightning. Luke Barrett might still be alive. Grace approved the mission instantly. She didn't say anything, but her eyes glimmered. She had lost too many soldiers, too many friends, if there was even a small chance. They would take it. Maria boarded a recon craft with Lieutenant Adrian Price, a quiet pilot who had flown rescue missions on Europa. They shot down through Earth's clouds toward the Pacific Ocean. Storms still circled the area where the Valar had crashed. Black smoke still danced across the water like a ghost refusing to leave. They dove beneath the waves using sonar scanners and heat sensors. Hours passed, no signal, no wreckage. Then ping, a heartbeat, faint, buried deep. The recon craft descended further, using lights to pierce the dark blue around them. Men there, lodged between two underwater cliffs, lay the remains of the Valar, broken but not fully destroyed. Inside a sealed chamber near the engine core, they found him, Luke Barrett, unconscious, burned but alive, wrapped in emergency gel and buried under collapsed beams. Maria held her breath as robotic arms pulled him free. He was barely breathing, but his grip tightened slightly when she touched his shoulder. On the Tempest, the medbay lights turned red as doctors rushed him in. He was alive but fragile, and while his body could heal, his war wasn't done, because far beyond Earth, in the dark reaches of the solar system, something stirred. A Valari world breaker. A class of ships so large it carried its own moons as shields. It had remained hidden behind Saturn's rings, waiting, silent, observing now. With the hive node destroyed, it activated. Inside the command pit of the world breaker, a new Valari warlord rose, unlike the others. This one didn't believe in surrender or diplomacy. He believed in annihilation. His name was not spoken only, hissed among Valari ranks as the final will. And his mission was simple. If the humans will not kneel, then the planet will. Burn with them. When Grace heard the first scan readings from Saturn, she froze. A world breaker was a planet killer. And Earth was in its path. She called an emergency fleet meeting. Everyone who can fly, prepare, she said. We're going to finish this. Maria stepped into the room just as the officers were leaving. She looked tired. Her jumpsuit still damp from the ocean. I'm coming too, she said. Grace didn't argue. You earned it, she replied, then added softly. He's awake. Maria rushed to the medical bay. There he was, Luke Barrett, wrapped in bandages. Eyes barely open, but alive. He looked at her, voice hoarse. Did we win? Maria smiled. Through her tears, not yet. He sat up slowly, pain twisting his face. Then we've still got work to do. Outside the window, the stars were shifting again. The fleet was gathering every remaining ship in the Black Armada, the Tempest, the Phantom, the Revenant. Even a few Earth-built carriers once thought useless, all heading toward Saturn, to face the largest ship the Valari had ever built. A ship that carried death in its belly, and the last command of a dying empire erased them. But humans weren't just survivors, they were fighters. And they had one message left to send. We don't kneel. Not today. Not ever. Saturn loomed ahead like a silent god, its golden rings stretching wide across the void. But now, behind those rings, came a shadow bigger than any ship humans had ever seen. The Valari Worldbreaker drifted slowly into the light. Its surface lined with weapon silos and armor, the thickness of small mountains. It didn't look like a ship. It looked like the end of the world inside the Black Armada. Tension ran high. Every crew member knew what they were flying into, certain death or history. There was no in-between in the bridge of the UES Tempest. Admiral Grace Monroe stood in front of the full fleet hologram. Red warnings blinked across the board, but her eyes didn't move from the shadow ahead. She tapped the comm panel and opened a fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Monroe, she said calmly. I know what you see out there. I know it looks like the end, but we are Terran. We are the species that survived our own planet's wars. Our own hunger, our own madness. We don't stop because something is bigger. We fly into it and punch through. Silence followed her words. Then, one by one, the comms lit up with voices from every ship. Pilots, gunners, engineers, some young, some old, all answering back. For Earth, for Terra, for the ones we lost. For the ones still watching, Luke Barrett, still bandaged, stood inside the used Phantom. Leaning on Maria Dawson for balance. I can't fly, he muttered. Maria smiled. Good, because I can. Luke looked surprised. You? She grinned. Didn't I ever tell you? I passed flight school before I picked up a wrench. They entered a modified assault fighter, small, fast, and armed with one single warhead. Their mission, get inside the Worldbreaker, find its core, and detonate it from within. It was a suicide run, and they both knew it. But they weren't alone. The U's Revenant, led by Commander Tobias Gray, would break the outer defense ring. The Phantom and Ironclad would draw the Worldbreaker's fire. The Tempest would hang back, launching drones and running point defense. The battle began with no warning. Terran warships shot forward like arrows. The Valari responded with cold precision. Giant plasma beams sliced through the darkness. One Terran destroyer was vaporized instantly, but the rest pushed on. Fighters danced between laser fire, leaving smoke trails behind. Terran drones swarmed the enemy cannons, sacrificing themselves to blind the gunners. Inside the cockpit, Maria flew low. Skimming the enemy hull, Luke tapped into the ship's system, trying to find a path through the outer vents. There, he pointed. Thermal shaft leads to the core. Maria turned sharply, engines howling. The fighter slipped into the shaft, just barely missing a rotating blade. Inside, it was quiet, too quiet, then movement. Dozens of Valari drones activated, crawling along the walls like spiders. "They're on to us," Luke yelled. Maria spun the ship, firing burst shots. But more drones poured in from behind. Suddenly an explosion from above. The shaft cracked open. A second Terran fighter dove in, piloted by Samantha Reyes. "I never leave a teammate behind." She called over the comm. She fired 2 missiles into the drone swarm, giving Luke and Maria the opening they needed. They burst through into the inner chamber of the World Breaker. It was massive, like flying into the heart of a planet. The energy core pulsed, alive with burning light. "It's too big to destroy with conventional fire," Luke muttered. Maria reached under the seat and pulled out a small device. "Good thing this isn't conventional," she said. It was an EM Cascade warhead. Made for one thing: imploding power systems from the inside. Luke set the timer, 3 minutes. He said. Maria looked at him. "You sure?" He nodded. "This is how it ends." But just as they turned to escape, a massive blast ripped through the side of the core. A Valari interceptor, black, sleek, and brutal, hovered in their way. Weapons charged, it fired Riest, dove in between them. Her ship took the hit, exploding into white flame. Maria screamed. But there was no time to mourn. Luke shouted, "Go! Now!" They fired engines, tearing back through the shaft, chased by shockwaves and collapsing tunnels. The warhead detonated just as they broke through the surface. A blinding, light-filled space, and then silence. The World Breaker cracked down the middle, its shields collapsing, its core folding in on itself. Valari ships across the battlefield flickered, lost control, and fell apart on Earth. People stared up at the stars, and they saw the shadow disappear inside the escape pod. Luke and Maria floated in silence. He looked at her, barely breathing. Did we make it?" She laughed, tears in her eyes. "You tell me." In orbit, Grace Monroe watched as the last enemy ship went dark. She turned to her crew. "It's done," she whispered. The war was over, but the cost was unforgettable, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Years passed, but the sky never looked the same again. Not to Earth's people, because once it held war, and now it held memory. A giant memorial floated in orbit shaped like the old Valor's prow, black and gleaming. Its name glowed in silver across the surface. The Black Armada. We never kneeled. Every year, on the same day, thousands gathered across Earth's continents, in schools, parks, and spaceports. They looked up in silence. Ships flew over in formation, leaving trails of light in the sky. And children asked questions like, did they really think we'd give up? Inside the new Terran Command Academy, a young cadet ran through a hall lined with bronze statues. One was of Admiral Grace Monroe, standing tall, with her arms behind her back. Another of Luke Barrett, gripping a helmet, eyes raised toward the stars. And beside him, Maria Dawson, tools in one hand, battle data slate in the other. Together, they were called the last line, the ones who stood when everyone else bent. The war with the Valari was over. Their empire shattered after the fall of the World Breaker. What remained of them now lived in peace across new borders. Some even asked to learn from humans, to understand what made them fight so hard. The Black Armada had changed everything, and the galaxy knew it. On a distant moon, where the soil was red and the sun barely rose, an alien child once asked his mother, "Why do the humans speak of shadows as if they're proud?" And the mother whispered, "Because once they sent their shadows to fight monsters in the light." On Earth, Maria Dawson now ran the Fleet Engineering Corps. She taught young minds how to repair warships, how to think like survivors. But her hands still carried the burns from that last mission. And in her office, behind her chair, hung the melted piece of Valor's hull, the one she had carried from the sea. It reminded her every day. Nothing was impossible if someone dared to. Jake Holloway returned too. They had found him in a mountain village. 2 years after the war, he had crash-landed in silence and lived among locals. Never saying who he was when they brought him back, he just smiled and said, "Told you I wasn't done." As for Luke Barrett, he never gave another public speech, never asked for medals or statues. He moved to a quiet town by the sea where waves whispered instead of engines. Some said he was haunted by those who didn't make it. Some said he just wanted peace. But one thing was true: when the stars called again, he answered, one early morning. A sleek, silent ship landed on his beach. Its black hull marked with a single symbol, the crest of the Black Armada. Grace Monroe stepped out, older, slower, but still sharp. She looked at Luke and said, "They're calling it something new now." Luke raised a brow. "What?" She smiled softly. The Terran Accord. A coalition of human and alien systems was forming, one that refused to bow to tyrants ever again. And they wanted him, Luke Barrett, to lead Earth's role in it. He said nothing for a long while. Just stared out at the ocean, then he turned to Grace. "I'll come," he said. "But not for politics." Grace nodded, understanding. "For the ones who still need us," she replied. And so, the next generation of explorers, soldiers, engineers, and dreamers was born not from conquest, but from resistance. The galaxy had learned something the hard way. Humanity was not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced. But they were impossible to break because they remembered where they came from. Because they stood up even when all odds were against them. Because, when told to kneel, they stood taller. And now, when alien children studied galactic history, they didn't just learn dates and battles. They learned stories about a planet called Earth, a fleet made of shadows, a girl with fire on her fingers, a pilot who never gave up, and a man who flew into death to save the living. In the center of the new Terran Alliance Fleet HQ, there stood a flame eternal. And beneath it, etched into stone, were the final words Grace had once spoken before that last battle. Words that would never fade. Words that every Terran child now memorized. "We are the voice in the silence, the fire in the cold, the shadow that does not fear the light. We are human, and we do not kneel, and above, always watching the stars, still waiting for the next chapter, still shining over a world that had once been told to fall and chose instead to rise."